Year 1161. Jerusalem, a city that has swallowed rivers of blood for 200 years, is about to hear a single cry that will echo for 9 centuries. Inside the Tower of David Palace, Queen Agnes of Edessa, descendant of French knights and Armenian princesses, is in the final agonizing hours of labor. The same woman who once danced barefoot in the moonlit gardens of Edessa now screams in 3 languages at once: French, Latin, Aramaic, while midwives press cold silver crosses to her forehead and pour rosewater from Damascus over her lips. Outside the chamber door, the royal guards stand like statues, helmets under their arms, praying in Frankish, Greek, Syriac, Arabic, and Armenian. Because this child is not just another prince. He is the last direct male heir of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, a fragile crusader island drowning in a Muslim sea. At the precise moment the muezzin's call to noon prayer rises from Al-Aqsa, and the great bells of the Holy Sepulchre answer back in defiant bronze, the baby is born. Blonde hair like molten gold, eyes the impossible blue of the Mediterranean at dawn, and a smile so radiant that the oldest midwife, a woman who has brought 1,000 children into the world, falls to her knees and whispers, "I have just seen the face of an angel." They wrap him in silk embroidered with tiny golden crosses and roaring lions, and name him Baldwin, bold friend. The nurses lift him toward the arched window so the same sun that once shone on Jesus touches his face for the first time. Jerusalem itself seems to hold its breath. Even the wind stops blowing through the cypress trees. The court astrologer, an ancient Arab scholar named Ibn al-Sufi, is summoned immediately. He casts the child's horoscope under the palace tower, studies the stars of the previous night, then examines the infant's tiny palms. His hands begin to tremble. He pulls King Amalric into the shadows and whispers in Arabic, "This boy will wear a crown of gold and a mask of silver. He will save Jerusalem and break every heart that loves him." Amalric laughs, claps the old man on the back. "All kings wear masks," he says. The astrologer does not laugh. He bows so low his beard touches the floor and leaves the room walking backwards, the way one leaves the presence of death. Queen Agnes cradles her son against her breast and sings the same lullaby her mother sang to her in the champagne fields of France, a soft French melody about knights and roses. She has no idea that in a few short years she will sing the exact same song while hiding tears, while kissing fingers that can no longer feel her lips, while watching the most beautiful child in the world slowly rot in front of her eyes. The baby grabs her finger with surprising strength. That right hand, the one that will one day lose every nerve, tendon, every shred of flesh, holds on as if it already knows the price it will pay for the crown. That same night, in the palace chapel, a single beeswax candle flickers beside a splinter of the true cross. A young monk collapses in terror. He claims he saw a vision, the infant prince riding into battle wearing a silver mask that hides a face eaten away by disease, leading an army of ghosts, saving Jerusalem with hands that are nothing but bone wrapped in royal silk. The monk is dragged away and locked in the tower as a madman. 900 years later, historians will call him a prophet. The first year is perfect. Baldwin learns to walk on the same marble floors where Godfrey of Bouillon knelt after taking the city in 1099. He laughs when the court jester juggles pomegranates stained with the blood of the First Crusade. He reaches for the golden cross hanging above his cradle and gurgles with pure joy. The royal physicians examine him and declare him the healthiest, strongest prince born to the House of Anjou in a century. They are wrong. Catastrophically, heartbreakingly, King Amalric carries his son on his shoulders along the battlements at sunset. He points east to the horizon where the desert begins and says, "One day, my little lion, all this will be yours to defend against the entire world." The baby grabs his father's beard and laughs so hard, the guards smile beneath their helmets. Amalric kisses the tiny hand. He does not notice that the child's right arm hangs a fraction lower than the left. He does not see the shadow that has already begun to cross his son's future. In the nursery, a young nurse from Acre bathes the prince every morning. She scrubs his right arm harder because it always feels colder than the left. The baby never flinches, never cries. She tells no one. She is terrified. Years later, on her own deathbed, she will weep and confess to a priest, "I knew from that very first bath. God had already marked him with the cross of suffering." But here is the part no history book ever dares to emphasize. At the exact moment Baldwin draws his first breath in Jerusalem, a 24-year-old Kurdish officer named Yusuf ibn Ayyub, the man the world will come to know as Saladin, is riding across the burning Sinai on a routine patrol. He looks up at the same sun that is shining on the newborn prince and feels, for reasons he cannot explain, a sudden shiver run down his spine, as if fate itself just whispered his name. Two boys, two faiths, one city. One impossible, heartbreaking, magnificent destiny. The cry that shook Jerusalem that day was soft, almost angelic, yet it traveled across continents, across centuries, and landed in your ears tonight. Because this is not the story of a prince born with everything. This is the story of a king who lost everything. His beauty, his body, his future, and still refused to lose his crown, his courage, or his claim on immortality. 9 peaceful years have passed since that first cry shook Jerusalem. The palace gardens look exactly the same, but the boy running through them is already changing inside. He is barefoot, laughing wildly, chasing a small wooden ball painted with golden lions. The other children are sons of great lords, yet they always let Prince Baldwin win. He does not notice. To him, the world is perfect, and he is immortal. His right arm moves just a little slower than the left, but nobody has spoken of it, not yet. Then comes the morning that cuts his childhood in half forever. The royal physicians have been watching for months. They have seen cups slip from his fingers without him realizing. They have seen dark bruises appear on his right side for no reason at all. They have stayed silent until today. They ask the prince to sit on a cool marble bench under the orange trees. The chief physician, Master Giles, kneels before the child with a gentle smile. "Your Highness," he says softly, "shall we play a little game?" Baldwin's face lights up brighter than the sun. Games are everything to him. Master Giles takes out a long silver needle used for sewing banners. He asks Baldwin to close his eyes. The boy obeys, still smiling wide. The needle touches his left hand. Baldwin bursts into giggles. "That tickles!" The needle touches his left arm. He laughs even louder. Again, again. The needle moves to his right hand. Nothing. The smile freezes on his face. Master Giles presses harder. Still nothing. He pricks the right forearm until a bead of blood appears. Baldwin stares at the red drop like it belongs to a stranger. "Why is there blood?" he whispers. "I didn't feel anything at all." The courtyard falls completely silent. Even the birds stop singing. From the balcony above, Queen Agnes feels her heart stop. She grips the stone so hard her rings cut into her skin. She already knows. That evening, the physicians meet behind locked doors. Their whispers leak through the wood. Lepra, loss of feeling, nerves dying, no cure. He will lose his face while he still lives. Baldwin stands outside the door, barefoot, clutching his wooden lion. He does not cry. Princes do not cry. But inside, something shatters like glass. Later, alone in his room, he steals the same silver needle. He sits on his bed and stabs his right hand again and again, harder each time. Blood runs across his fingers, drips onto the silk sheets, stains them crimson. He feels nothing. He stares at the blood, then at the needle, then at his reflection in the bronze mirror. The smile in the mirror suddenly looks wrong. He whispers to his reflection, "Why can't you feel anything?" The reflection stays silent. That night, he dreams his right arm has turned to cold stone and drags him into black water. He wakes screaming. Queen Agnes runs in, gathers him close, rocks him like a baby. Only then does he let the tears fall. Even through the tears, he makes her swear, "Please don't tell Father yet. I don't want him to see me differently." The next morning, he walks into the great hall with both hands hidden behind his back, wearing the same bright smile that once lit the palace. Only now, it is the very first mask he has ever worn. King Almeric sees nothing wrong. He lifts his son high and laughs, "There's my little lion." Baldwin laughs back. The sound is perfect. Nobody hears the emptiness behind it. In a quiet corner, Master Giles writes in the royal ledger, "Day the laughter died. 9th year of our Lord. The prince felt no pain. The kingdom will feel it soon enough." Far away in Damascus, Saladin reads a report about the Frankish heir. He folds the parchment and says to the empty tent, "A sick child. The Franks are finished." He could not be more wrong, because the boy who just lost feeling in his hand has also just gained something far stronger. A reason to never ever give up. The needle stole the laughter, but it could not steal the fire. That day, in the terrible silence after the giggle ended, the Leper King was truly born. Distant war drums fade into heavy footsteps on stone. The diagnosis reaches King Amalric like an arrow through the heart. He is in the great hall reviewing maps of Saladin's new conquests when Master Giles kneels and hands him the sealed parchment. The king breaks the wax with fingers that suddenly feel too clumsy. He reads once, then again, then lets the parchment fall as if it is poisoned. The words are simple, clinical, merciless. Lepra leonina, progressive, no known cure. Expected lifespan, 15 years, perhaps less. The prince will lose face, limbs, sight, voice. He will die in agony. He must never ascend the throne. Amalric does not scream, he does not weep. He simply stands there staring at the parchment on the floor as if it is a death sentence for the entire kingdom. Because it is. Then something ancient and terrifying rises in his chest. He storms into the council chamber where the barons and bishops are already gathering like vultures who have smelled blood. They have heard whispers. They are ready to speak of regency, of cousins, of quietly setting Baldwin aside for the good of the realm. Amalric kicks the doors so hard they slam against the walls and crack the stone. Silence falls like an axe. He walks to the head of the table, places both gauntleted fists down so hard the oak groans, and speaks in a voice that has broken armies. My son will be king. Anyone who says otherwise will answer to me, to God, and to every sword in this room. A bishop dares to rise. Your Majesty, the boy is afflicted. Jerusalem needs a warrior, not. Amalric's dagger is out and buried in the table an inch from the bishop's hand before the sentence finishes. Afflicted? He roars. My son is the blood of Godfrey, of Baldwin I, of every king who held this city when the whole world wanted it burned. You think God gave us this kingdom just to watch it die because a child has no feeling in one arm? Then you understand neither God nor war. He turns to the knights. From this day, Baldwin trains harder than any prince in history. He will ride before he loses his legs. He will fight before he loses his hands. He will rule before he loses his face. And when his body fails, his mind will be sharper than any sword in Christendom. He looks each man in the eye. If any of you cannot serve a leper king, leave now. The desert is wide, and Saladin is merciful to cowards. Not a single man moved. Then something extraordinary happens. The hardest knight in the room, Reynold of Chatillon, the man who once sacked Cyprus for fun, stands up, draws his sword, and slams it point down into the floor. For Baldwin, he growls. One by one, every knight follows. Swords bury themselves in the stone floor until the chamber looks like a forest of steel. Amalric's eyes glisten, but his voice does not waver. Good. Then we begin tomorrow. My son will learn pain before pain learns him. That night, he goes to Baldwin's chamber. The boy is sitting on the windowsill, staring at his numb hand as if it belongs to a stranger. Moonlight turns his blonde hair silver. Amalric kneels, a king kneeling to a 9-year-old child, and takes the small hand in his own massive ones. Listen to me, my lion. Your body may betray you. Men may betray you. But I will never betray you. You will be king, and you will be the greatest king this land has ever seen. I swear it on the true cross. I swear it on my soul. Baldwin looks up. His eyes are already older than his years. Will it hurt, father? Yes, Amalric answers, voice cracking for the first time. It will hurt more than anything in this world. The boy nods slowly. Then I will learn to hurt quietly, so no one ever sees me weak.
Amalric pulls his son into his arms and holds him so tightly it is impossible to tell who is shaking. Outside the window, the night watch changes on the walls. Torches move like fireflies. Somewhere in the distance, a lion roars in the royal menagerie, a gift from Nubia. The sound rolls across Jerusalem like a warning and a promise. In that moment, two things are forged forever: a father's impossible vow and a boy's unbreakable will. The council wanted to bury a sick child. Amalric just declared war on God himself. He will teach his son to fight with a dying body the way other fathers teach their sons to walk. And Saladin, reading reports in Damascus, will one day open a letter that makes even the desert lion pause. The Frankish king trains his leper son as if he were Achilles. The boy does not cry. The boy does not stop. Pray Allah we never face him in battle. Pause. 5 seconds. Single sword being sharpened slowly. A father looked at destiny and said, "Not my son, not while I breathe." The Leper King's legend did not begin with a crown. It began with a father who refused to let God write the ending.
The physicians called it treatment. Baldwin called it hell with a Latin name. Every third night, when the moon was hidden and the palace slept, 4 silent servants carried a sealed bronze tub into the prince's chamber. The air turned thick and metallic before the lid even came off. Mercury vapor, heavy as belt, crawled along the floor like poison fog. They undressed him with the same slowness priests used to strip a corpse. The bandages came off last. Beneath them, his skin was a battlefield. Open craters on his cheeks, fingers blackened and curling inward, legs mapped with ulcers that would never heal. The smell made grown men gag. Baldwin never flinched. He had stopped flinching years ago. They lowered him into the glowing liquid. The first second was cold. The next second was fire. Mercury does not burn the skin. It burns the soul. It felt as if 1,000 red-hot needles were being driven straight into his bones. His teeth chattered so violently he bit through his tongue. Blood mixed with saliva and dripped into the shining poison, turning it pink. He was not allowed to scream. Screaming would wake the palace. Screaming would let the kingdom know its future king was being cooked alive. So he screamed without sound. Mouth wide, eyes bulging, every muscle locked in silent agony while the mercury did its useless work. The physicians claimed it drew the poison out. Everyone knew it was a lie. Mercury killed more lepers than it ever saved. But hope, even false hope, was the only thing they had left to give him. 15 minutes, 840 heartbeats of pure torment. When they finally lifted him out, his skin was the color of ash and his body shook like a leaf in a storm. They wrapped him in linen soaked in rose water and laid him on sheets that would be burned by morning. For hours afterward, he lay rigid, staring at the ceiling, feeling the poison still moving inside his veins like liquid fire.
Some nights, the pain was so complete he forgot his own name. Some nights he prayed for death and hated himself for the weakness. But every single time, when the servants left and the door closed, Baldwin forced himself to sit up, forced his ruined hands to close into fists, forced his cracked lips to form the same words he had whispered since he was 9. I am not finished. Not yet. Not while Jerusalem needs me. Then he would drag himself to the small writing desk, light a single candle with shaking fingers, and study battle maps until dawn. Because if his body had to burn, his mind would stay ice. One night, after a treatment worse than any before, his mother found him on the floor, trying to crawl to the maps. His legs had given out. Mercury sweat poured from his pores. He looked up at her with the one eye that still worked and rasped, "Mother, am I being punished for some sin I don't remember?" Agnes fell to her knees, gathered his fevered body against hers, and rocked him while the mercury still steamed off his skin. "No, my love," she whispered through tears that fell like rain on his sores. "You are being forged. God is not punishing you. He is making you unbreakable." Baldwin closed his eye and let her hold him until the shaking stopped. Years later, when he rode into battle, unable to feel the reins, unable to feel the sword in his hand, unable to feel anything below the waist, men would swear they saw fire in his eyes that no mortal pain could put out. They never knew the fire had been lit in a bronze tub full of poison. Night after night, year after year. The mercury never cured the disease, but it taught a dying boy one unbreakable truth. Pain is just pain. It can take your body. It can take your face. It can take everything you love, but it can never take the part of you that decides to stand up again. And every time Baldwin rose from that tub of hell, half dead, half alive, dripping poison and defiance, he proved it. The mercury baths were meant to save his life. Instead, they saved his legend. Because the king who would one day make Saladin tremble was not born on a throne. He was born in fire no one else could see, and he walked out of it every single time.
She was the only one allowed to see him break. When the palace corridors fell silent and the torches burned low, when even the guards pretended not to hear the muffled cries behind the cedar door, Queen Agnes slipped into her son's chamber like a ghost wrapped in moonlight. Baldwin was 13 now. The disease had begun its cruel harvest. His right hand looked like a claw wrapped in white linen. The first sores had appeared on his face, small red circles that would soon become craters. The physicians had started the mercury treatments. His mouth tasted of metal and death. But worst of all was the silence he forced on himself during the day, the perfect royal smile, the steady voice, the straight back. All of it a performance for a kingdom that must never see its future king weakened. Only at night, when the mask came off, did the child return. Agnes would find him curled on the floor beside his bed, silver mask discarded like something cursed, face pressed into the cold stone as if he could hide from God himself. His body shook with sobs he had held in for hours. She never spoke first. She simply sat on the floor, gathered her dying boy into her lap the way she had when he was small, and began to sing. The same French lullaby from Champagne she had sung the night he was born. Dors mon enfant, dors dans mes bras, le vent du soir berce les rois et les mendiants. Sleep, my child, sleep in my arms. The evening wind rocks both kings and beggars. Her voice never wavered, even when his ruined fingers clutched at her gown, even when the sores on his cheek left blood on her silk, even when the mercury made him shake so hard she had to hold him like a mother holding a storm. Some nights he could not bear her touch on the dead parts of his skin and would pull away in shame. She let him go, then sang softer, until the melody pulled him back into her arms like a tide. Some nights the pain was so bad he bit through his lip to stay quiet. She wiped the blood with her sleeve and kept singing. Some nights he whispered the question that broke her heart more than any scream. Mother, when I am king, will they still love me when I look like a monster? She held his face, sores and all, looked straight into the one eye that could still cry, and answered, My lion, they will love you more, because only a monster could endure what you endure, and only a saint could stay gentle through it. And you, my beautiful boy, are both. Then she sang until his breathing slowed, until the trembling stopped, until the child who carried a kingdom on breaking shoulders finally slept. Years later, when the mask was solid silver and the throne was his, when even speaking cost him blood, grown knights would swear they sometimes heard a faint French lullaby on the night wind before battle, as if the queen's voice still followed her son into the dark. And on the worst nights of his life, when the pain tried to drag him into despair, Baldwin would close his ruined eyes and hear her again. Dors mon enfant, le vent du soir berce les rois. He never told anyone that sometimes, even as a crowned king tied to a war horse, he still fell asleep to his mother's voice. Because some wounds only a mother's song can reach. Some kings rule with swords. Baldwin ruled with a lullaby he carried in the only part of him the disease could never touch. The little boy who once cried in his mother's arms and learned that love does not need perfect skin to be perfect. She sang to a dying child every night for 10 years, and every night the dying child chose to live one more day. That is the real reason Jerusalem never fell while Baldwin lived. Not because of armies, not because of walls, but because a mother refused to stop singing, and a son refused to listen.
They said he would never hold a sword. They were wrong. Every dawn, while Jerusalem still slept under a violet sky, a small figure slipped out of the royal apartments and disappeared into the deserted training yard behind the stables. No heralds, no squires, only the cold and the silence and the pain he refused to feel. Baldwin was 11.
His right arm was already half dead, the fingers beginning to curl like burnt parchment. But every morning he dragged himself from bed before the roosters, wrapped his numb hand in linen soaked in vinegar, and tied himself to the wooden pell with leather straps so he would not drop the sword. The first weeks were hell. The blade weighed more than he did. His shoulder screamed. Tears ran down his cheeks, but he bit his lip until it bled so no one would hear him cry. When the sword finally fell, he picked it up with his left hand and started again. 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 1,000 times before sunrise. He trained with the left because the right was dying. He trained alone because he did not want pity. He trained in shadows because daylight belonged to the healthy prince the kingdom still pretended he was. Some nights the pain came anyway, not in the dead arm, but in the living heart. He would sit on the cold stone, press the useless hand against his chest, and whisper to God the same question over and over. Why did you choose me for this? No answer ever came, only the wind through the cypress trees and the distant howl of jackals beyond the walls. One winter morning, when the frost was thick and his breath hung white in the air, his father found him. Amalric had woken early, heard the rhythmic thud of wood on wood, and followed the sound like a man following a ghost. He stood in the doorway and watched his son, small, shivering, tears frozen on his cheeks, swing a practice sword again and again with his left hand, while the right hung twisted and useless at his side. Each blow was clumsy, desperate, furious. Each blow carried every tear the boy had never let anyone see. Amalric felt something break inside his chest. He stepped into the yard. Baldwin froze, ashamed, tried to hide the strapped hand behind his back. The king knelt in the frost, pulled his son against his mailed chest, and held him so tightly the boy could feel his heart hammering. "Listen to me," Amalric whispered, voice cracking. "You are not fighting the sword. You are fighting the disease. And every time you lift that blade, you win. Every single time." Baldwin buried his face in his father's neck and finally let the sobs come. They shook his whole body. Amalric did not let go until the storm passed. From that day, the training changed. Amalric came every dawn. He bound heavy stones to Baldwin's numb arm to force the dying muscles to remember strength. He made him ride without reins, guiding the horse with knees alone. He taught him to read battle maps by candlelight when the pain kept sleep away. When the boy's fingers began to blacken and curl, Amalric had the royal armorer craft a special gauntlet lined with silver rings that locked around the wrist so the hand could never drop the sword again, even when it had no strength left. And when Baldwin fell, exhausted, bleeding, unable to rise, Amalric would lift him, look him in the eyes, and say the words that became their private prayer. "Your body may fail you, my lion, but your will never will." Years later, when the silver mask finally hid the ruin of his face, when he could no longer walk and had to be tied to the saddle, when even speaking hurt, the knights who rode behind him would remember the child in the shadows who refused to surrender before the war had even begun.
They would remember the frost-covered yard, the small boy swinging a sword too heavy for him, tears frozen on his cheeks, and they would ride into battles that should have been impossible, because once a dying child had taught them what impossible really meant. The kingdom never saw those dawn tears. They only saw the king who never fell. But every scar on his soul, every drop of silent blood he shed in the shadows, became the steel that held Jerusalem together when everything else was falling apart. He trained in shadows so that one day he could stand in sunlight and make the whole world look away in awe. He trained alone so that one day an entire army would follow him without question. He trained while crying so that one day he could smile beneath a silver mask and make Saladin himself whisper, "That boy does not fight like a man who is dying. He fights like a man who has already looked death in the eye, and death blinked first." The Leper King was truly born.